Hi, Meghan Nicholls here, CEO at the Mississauga Food Bank. In addition to the work we do providing food for our hungry neighbors, we know that there's so much more that needs to be done to eradicate hunger and poverty once and for all. We all play a part in how we get there here in Mississauga and across Ontario, but it starts with how you use your vote. So today, I'd like to welcome three folks from our network who are former food bank clients, here to tell us about their experiences. So let's get started by introducing our guests today. We have Bruna, a volunteer here at the food bank, Doris, a member of the Peel Poverty Reduction Committee, and Tanola, who's CEO of the House of Praise and Prayer Food Pantry and Kitchen, one of the agencies in our network. Keeping these stories and issues in mind when you cast your vote will help put Ontario on the right track towards eradicating poverty. So Bruna, we'll start with you today. Can you describe your journey a little bit about what brought you and your family to needing to use a food bank?
Yeah, absolutely. So my family and I, we just arrived in Canada. When we came, my dad was the one that was in charge of the finances. He said that he was going to be providing for us. But then a year later, he said that, well, I no longer want to. So basically, in 24 hours, we basically lost all of our income. And all of our groceries came from the food bank. And honestly saved us, so thankful for it.
How did housing kind of play into your family's scenario? Were you able to find somewhere affordable to live?
To be completely honest, I'm so lucky because my landlord understood the situation that we were in, and there were times that we couldn't afford rent, and he was so kind and understandable, and he said, oh no, it's okay, you don't have to pay.
And there's so many people's stories that it sounds like the only reason they made it through is the kindness of someone. So from your perspective, what would it look like for those needs to not be required to be met by someone's kind of kind heart, but that there was a system to support people?
This young man called asking, oh, are you guys open? And like, yes, come here, we're gonna be providing food. Yep. He had just moved to Mississauga, and he was just like looking for some help because he barely could afford rent, he couldn't afford groceries. And when I went there, I provided him the food, and then he just looked so grateful. If you have like the resources, there's no excuse not to help. And then I feel like the government especially, that's why they're there in the first place, aren't they? We put them there in order for them to serve us. There should be places that he can, like, more affordable transportation, more affordable rent, more groceries. That's like something that he shouldn't be worrying so much about. He should be worrying about school. It's kind of unreasonable to expect the student to do well when there's so much. And then it shows that how it affects entire lives.
And their
families. Exactly. So it's not only the present, it's also about the future. It's the generations and the people that are growing up and becoming, and they are going to be out of the society. They're going to be the ones that are in charge one day. And
it's you're starting, instead of everyone starting at the same starting line, you're starting at one that's further back and still wondering. And people are like, well, why aren't you racing to the end with everybody else? Well, it's because I started half a mile back. And what would your message be to voters? Why is it so important for people who are either concerned about the issues we're talking about or experiencing the issues we're talking about to participate in voting this coming June?
If you don't vote, you're just allowing others to dictate what happens in your community, in your society.
So what are you hoping to see some of the parties propose as some of their solutions to these challenges this time around?
So I would like for the politicians to really understand the necessity of affordable housing. If you don't have somewhere to live, if you don't have somewhere to call home where you feel safe, you're just going to be putting like even an extra mile back. When you vote, you don't only vote for yourself, but you also vote for your community.
Absolutely, I love that. That's great. So Tanola, I understand you've had some experience with what it looks like to be living with precarious housing that's not consistent and permanent. So maybe you want to tell us a little bit about your experience of looking for stable housing.
When we migrated to Canada, it was very difficult for me to keep a job. I lost my job about 5 times. And when it got to the 5th time, I had to go on social assistance. And the apartment that we are getting is more expensive than the benefits that they are giving to pay the rent. We either have to choose buying enough food, or we have to choose between the groceries and the rent.
Would you go back and forth kind of every month, 1 month rent and 1 month something else?
Exactly, that was what was happening. I decided to be a self-employed. So I looked for a loan and I set up a business, a grocery store. I had to live inside my grocery store for 6 months to keep the business. I register with a gym, I go there in the morning, I have my shower, and I come and open my store with a beautiful smile, and I'm doing my thing until I was able to afford a better accommodation.
How long was that period between you kind of arriving in Canada and starting the grocery store and when you felt you were kind of back on your feet? How long did that journey
about
take
6
you?
years. About 6 good years, yeah.
So what would the folks at the social assistance office kind of say to you when you said, look, my accommodation costs me this much, but you're only giving me this much? Like, how do those conversations go between you and those kind of government staff?
They just tell you that's the best the government can do. And we appreciate that the government is doing a lot, but there's still a gap. We recognize that there's a gap. I mean, an apartment is 1,400 and you are being paid 800, and you still have to eat, you still have to do other things. So it's not adding up.
Thinking of the election coming up, why do you think it's important for people to engage with the election and to vote?
I believe it's very important for everybody to participate. We are supposed to be active members of the society, and part of our duties is to vote sensibly.
I like your idea about taking kind of ownership of your community, saying voting is part of saying this is my community and I want to have a say, I want to influence.
Yeah.
Yes, an active member. I like that.
Very important, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Doris, we'll chat with you a little bit here. Thanks for joining us. You and your family have been on social assistance in the past, specifically the Ontario Disability Support Program. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what brought your family to using social assistance and kind of what that looked like over the years.
My husband has a lot of medical issues. So the only option was ODSP and CPP disability. So in order to get on CPP disability, you've got to go through ODSP. Rent was not exactly affordable. And if you're on ODSP, it's even worse. Well, my daughter lives with us. She can't afford to live on her own because rent is way out of her budget.
Right.
So we have to combine the three of us.
Yeah.
So like my husband and I pay 2/3 the rent, she pays 1/3.
How did you find out about all these resources? Because navigating them is what I understand to be the most difficult.
It is a nightmare to navigate, but we had a worker that really knew her job and really worked to help her clients. She told us about different things that we could access to help make life a bit easier. And it just happened, we saw a truck go by with the Mississauga Food Bank logo on it. So I inquired and what we needed to bring and everything, and I was floored the first day we went in, how kind they were.
Heading into this election, what are you watching for when you're looking at what the different parties promise?
Well,
and what would you encourage folks who are watching you to look for our community?
With my volunteering I've been doing since I retired, we've been homeless at one point in our life. We've had to go to the food bank for assistance. It's got to be food security.
Food security, so you want to see them talking about food security specifically.
Affordable housing.
My understanding is there's over 10,000, I believe, people on the wait list.
Yes.
And last year they didn't add any new units.
No. Food prices are extremely high. They need to address that as well.
And what would social assistance rates need to look like for people to be able to live without kind of this extra stress we've talked about, holding them back from realizing their potential as real contributors to our community?
Bring it up to 2022 standard.
2022 standard.
Not 1980. Things aren't there. So the government really needs to look at how the people that make less than 20,000 or less than 30,000 even are living.
So what would your kind of advice be to people who are watching, who care about our community? How can they make good choices in this next election?
Research.
Do your research.
Do your research and not just skim the research. Dig. Ask the hard questions, and I mean the really hard questions. Speak. Simple going in and ticking that ballot is speaking. You don't have to say any words.
Well, thank you, all three of you. I am really hopeful that we can activate folks to really vote, not just on behalf of what makes a difference for their lives, but what makes a difference for our entire community, for people using food banks, for people using, living in shelters, really struggling with some of the challenges we've talked about today. So to all of you today, your voice matters. Please get out and vote on June the 2nd, not only for yourself, but also for your neighbors in Mississauga and across all of Ontario. Thank you.